Hi everyone, this is Aaliyah Gray with the Center for Ethics Education at this year's HIV and Drug Abuse Prevention Research Ethics Training Institute. I am here with Dr. John Rendina, Assistant Professor of Psychology at Hunter College, and we are very happy to speak with him today. So my first question for you is, what is your specific population to research, and would you describe this population as vulnerable or marginalized?
Sure. So my work primarily focuses on gay and bisexual men and other men who have sex with men, who, as you probably know, are the group that is most affected by the HIV epidemic, with really disproportionate rates compared to the general population. My work focuses in particular on HIV-positive gay and bisexual men, and so this is a population who are disproportionately men of color, who are disproportionately individuals that have an experience of mental health related issues, including substance use, and they are a population who experience a lot of intersectional forms of stigma. And so that's a primary focus of my research, is on the different types of stigma that these individuals experience and how those forms of stigma impact their health behavior, their mental health, and their physical health outcomes.
Okay, great. So how would you say that emerging technologies have changed the way research is conducted?
Sure. So, I think that this is particularly relevant for the population that I study. A lot of apps have come out in the past few years, like Grindr and Scruff, as well as the ones for the general public, like Tinder, and even things like Facebook Messenger, that have really dramatically changed the way that gay and bisexual men and other men who have sex with men meet each other. And so these technologies have, not surprisingly, become a major tool within research to find these men and to help get these men into various HIV-related research studies, whether that be HIV prevention or HIV treatment-related research. I think that the use of technology to recruit and enroll this population has become really prolific, and pretty much everybody does it, but I think one thing that we don't do is stop and think about some of the ethical related issues that this technology in particular can have that might be unique from other forms of recruitment techniques. So, we used to go to bars and find men and give them a brief survey and then ask them for their contact information and call them later to try to get them into a study. That comes with its own set of privacy and confidentiality issues, whereas this new form of technology also comes with its own forms of issues. And so that is actually how I first got interested in studying research ethics, is trying to think about what those different privacy and confidentiality related issues are when we're using these different technologies. So as part of my mentored research project that I did as part of the Fordham Ethics Institute, I recruited a large nationwide sample of gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men using two of these apps. We ended up getting about 12,000 guys to complete the survey. And what I looked at was how their levels of trust differed between online research and other things that they're doing online, like using their email or using social media or using these sexual networking apps. And we found that overwhelmingly the trust was actually highest in online research in comparison to these other technologies that they're using pretty much every day, especially this population who we specifically recruited from some of these different apps and sites. We then asked them about a range of 12 different types of data that these types of apps could collect, and this ranged from basic things like your profile information about your age and height, and got a little bit more granular into things like your HIV status, and then we got into things that were not necessarily data that they actually gave to the app, but things that the app was able to collect or generate on its own. So we asked about things like app-generated location information and app-generated or app collected information about other things that are on the mobile device. So, for example, some apps on certain platforms can collect information about the other apps that are installed on your phone and how often you use them and what kind of operating system you have and all of that kind of stuff. So we asked them about these 12 different types of data, and we asked them how concerned they were about the app owners collecting those data in the first place, about the app owners selling those data to third parties like marketing firms, and about the app owners sharing those data with researchers. We found that in terms of collecting the data, on average, people were concerned about half of the different types of data that we asked about. They were actually a little less concerned about sharing those data with researchers, and quite a bit more concerned about those data being sold to third parties. So one of the most interesting things is that we found that they were more concerned about the app owners collecting the data than about the app owners sharing those data with researchers, which obviously they wouldn't be able to share the data with researchers if they hadn't collected it in the first place. So that was kind of interesting that they did have this higher level of trust in online research than they had in some of these different technologies that they're using every day. The other thing, which was a little bit more concerning, was just the amount of privacy-related concerns that they had about these different activities. One thing that I didn't mention is that we actually generated the list of these different types of data and the 3 different data-related activities based on the terms of use and the privacy policies of some of the various apps that I mentioned before. And so a lot of these different types of data and these 3 different activities, collection, selling, and sharing, are things that people have already granted permission for the apps to do when they agree to the terms of service. But most people don't realize this. And so one of the things that really stood out to me was just that people are very concerned about the types of things that they've already given these app owners permission for. So that, I think, poses a little bit of an ethical dilemma, both more broadly in terms of policy and whether we need to be developing policies around the appropriate way to present terms of service, which, as you know, are long legal documents right now. They're not presented in the way that researchers have been trying to reform consent forms to be over the past decade or so, in terms of presenting the most important information up front, trying to give things briefly, trying to use pictures and other tools to help improve understanding. And the other, I think, big issue, besides just whether we need policies about how to develop these terms of service, is whether we need policies about whether it needs to be all or nothing. So what we found was that most people are uncomfortable with some things, but totally fine with other things. And what that suggests to me is that we need to be doing more to allow people to opt in and opt out of various different things that they are or not comfortable with, rather than making them agree to everything in order to be able to use something. And so, app owners might develop a list of the data that are most essential for them to collect that they will require of everyone, and then they could also come up with a list of things that maybe aren't essential for them to store or share or sell, that people could opt in or opt out of. And some apps and some websites have already started doing this, and I think we do see that some people opt in and some people opt out, and I think it makes it a better experience and increased public trust in these different technologies when people have that level of control, which I think is ultimately what's most important.
Great. Thank you.